I want to acknowledge that it's okay to ask that question. And it's a good question to ask. There's a lot of people that stay in jobs for a long time that should have moved on a long time ago. There are a million reasons why people leave jobs. It doesn't make you a bad person to be considering that.
Should I quit my job? Hopefully you don't think I should quit my job. I actually kind of like it here. But what about you? Have you ever wondered that? If you haven't, congratulations, but more than likely you will at some point. Moving from being a full-time student to a full-time employee can be a tough transition, and it can feel like a lot is riding on making that very first job offer out of school work for the long term, especially if that offer is in your field of study. And we can start getting pretty anxious if the job starts to feel like it might not be a good fit. This week, HR professional, InterVarsity alumna, and my wife, Kaitlynn Steele, joins us to talk through some helpful processes for determining fit at work and answering that big question, should I quit my job? Welcome to After 4, your podcast for navigating life after graduation. I'm your host and guide, John Steele, and this one's for you, alumni. Kaitlynn Steele, welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me again.
Yes, always excited, always exciting, and excited to hang out with my dear good friend, fellow alum, and wife.
Not in that order.
For an episode of the exactly, whatever order is the appropriate order. Welcome back. You've been on the podcast a few different times. I think pretty much always leaning into some of your expertise and experience in the HR world, and today will be similar. We'll be right in that same vein. Let's see here, but before we jump in too far, would you just help those of our listeners who don't know you yet, help them get to know you a bit?
Well, sure. So first of all, I am an InterVarsity alum. Went to school at Minnesota State University Mankato. That's Mankato,
Go Mavericks.
Minnesota. If you didn't catch that from the very descriptive name. And I currently work for a commercial construction company in Mankato. We're a general contractor. I mostly focus on marketing and HR. As John said, I am his wife, and we've got 2 kids, a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old. We had birthday season, so we're through the birthdays now.
Yes, we are. And for anybody joining us on YouTube, they can see our family
Oh,
photo in the
yes.
background. And as usual, at least in the framing that I have right here, my head has been cut off in the
That's
picture.
true.
So, yeah, I don't know that our kids have. I mean, I guess there was a time back in the day that Aurora showed up, just her voice showed up in the background. Well, I guess we did that episode, our trip to
Yep, she
Urbana.
was in that one.
Our kids made a few, yeah, they made a few appearances there, but I think this is probably the first time that they're seen on screen. So if any of you loyal viewers are interested in seeing our family all together, you can jump on YouTube and check out the video here and see the picture in the background. So Kaitlynn, you're joining us in at least what I hope has been an interesting series for people. And we've been talking about big questions. They are questions that we know people in this season of life, this first year of life after graduation, questions that we either know that they're asking, or things that we would recommend they be asking and thinking through, because we just think it might be wise to be considering some of these things. And the question that we're talking through today is, should I quit my job? And it seems like, especially since, COVID 2020, what was the great, what was the term that they used back
Quiet
then for
quitting.
everybody? Yeah, quiet
That's
quitting.
the
And
term.
I think there was
Mm.
I think there was another term though of just like the great flight or the great,
Oh, I can't think of it now. Of course, that you're putting me on the spot.
yeah,
Like
sorry.
the Great Migration is all I can think of.
Yeah, it is something exact. It's like a play on
Yep.
something like that, but the big quit. I don't know. I can't remember. That's what we'll call it. Ever
Everybody
since
quitting their job
I'm
all at once. That's the main thing that you're trying to get out of that.
yes, yeah, exactly. That there's like a huge amount of transition, and transition wasn't uncommon, but it became even
Mhm.
more common, and it seems like that's sort of continued. And so whether or not you should stick with a job is a pretty common thing to be wondering. I think especially when you are in the middle of a big transition, and you probably have a little bit of nervousness around, did I spend all this time studying the right
Yep.
thing? Did I take the right job? And so we figured, hey, this seems like a good thing for us to chat about. So I'd like to start just very broadly. I've done this every episode, or almost every episode, and have just asked that question very overtly. And so that is, if you were sitting down with a young InterVarsity alum, first year of life after graduation, and they asked you, Caitlin, should I quit my job? What would you say to them?
Well, first off, I've been there. I've wrestled through those questions, so I know. Uh, like, I want to just acknowledge that if you're having those questions, it's probably not a fun place to be in.
Mm,
You know, y- you said there's a lot of those thoughts of like, did I waste all this time and this money, going to school, or is this the career path that I want? All of those things. It can just be a really difficult decision. But the other side of it is, I want to acknowledge that it's okay to ask that question, and it's a good question to ask. There's a lot of
mm,
people that stay in jobs for a long time, that should have moved on a long time ago. So it's a good question, um, on both ends of the spectrum of, like, if you love your job and you love your coworkers, it's also a good question if you don't love your job and you don't love your coworkers, and everywhere in
mm,
between. There are a million reasons why people leave jobs, and it doesn't make you a bad person to be considering that. It may even, encourage you to go back to your job and modify some things to have it be a better fit for you. Um,
mm.
or you may end up at something totally different, something tangentially, similar but not the exact same. Um, as I've found out that, career paths are not linear. So,
Yeah.
especially nowadays, it's very common for people to be moving around, with different positions in different industries, and that's relatively new.
Yeah, and I mean, as you said, you've been there. I remember within the, we got married just a couple of months after you graduated from college, and you got a job like right away after we got back from our honeymoon. I think you started like the next
Yep.
week, and within 6 months you had changed
Yep.
jobs.
That was on the on the spectrum of jobs that I did not like. And
Hmm.
yeah, every day, having those like, holy crap, I don't want to do this. And it wasn't anything about the job. It just wasn't like, I learned something new about myself. This was not a good fit for me. I worked in a
Hmm.
call center, and, I was an extrovert. I was talking to people every day. I thought I'd be fine. And what I realized in that job was that I wanted to talk to people more than once. I didn't want,
Huh.
every day. I don't know, it's like the opposite of Groundhog's Day where, like, you you don't see anybody again. In my 6 months working there, I talked to one person twice, and that was because I couldn't fix something and had to, like,
Wow.
schedule a call back with them. And so I just wanted something where I could build more relationships with that, with our, like, clients. Whatever job that was just something that I found out was important to me that I had no idea prior to that job.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, and that was not an easy decision, and it was certainly not, as you said, it was very difficult kind of navigating through it. It was an emotional
Mhm.
situation, and yeah, it was hard to figure out how to do that well. And so we feel for alumni that are finding themselves in that place of wondering, and it doesn't necessarily mean that quitting is the thing to do, which is kind of the next question that I want to ask, and that is more around the idea of assessing fit at a new job in particular. And especially if you just don't have that much work experience, maybe broadly, but certainly in your field of study. If you're kind of new on the scene, how is it that you go about assessing fit when you're just not feeling
Yeah,
sure?
absolutely. So first of all, I just want to mention, like, there are a few scenarios where, the answer of should I quit my job is probably a yes, absolutely. Uh, and if that is you're being put in danger on a regular basis and you've asked for safety precautions and your employer is not giving those, like, your life is more important than a paycheck.
Yeah.
Some sort of toxic work environments where your mental health is like taking a serious decline. Again, you are more important than your paycheck. You are still a
Mm,
worthwhile person if you're not making an income because you've quit your job. So I just not all of those scenarios happen to people, but I just want to mention those specific things. And then outside of that, if you're assessing fit at a job, um, the easiest way to do that is to pay attention to the job. So I just recommend that people take some time. Choosing if you're leaving a job or not is not usually a fast decision. It's something where you're sitting there and assessing what's going on. So take some time to write down what are the things that you're doing on a daily basis? What are the things you're doing once a month? Do I always feel this way when I'm doing a specific task? Maybe that task is not a good fit for me. Uh, am am I having these feelings when I'm working with a particular person or a particular boss? That might just be a personality thing or a communication thing. But take almost an inventory of what you're doing, um, and just be aware of those things, so that you have uh, a snippet of reality of what's actually going on. How often am I doing this? We all have things in our jobs that we just don't like. And that's okay. I think
mhm,
you'll have that anywhere you go. Um, but to figure out what reality is, sometimes we work ourselves up quite a bit about something that we don't like. And in reality, it's one day a month or something like that. So sort out what is your reality. And then from there, take a look at what are the things that are changeable? What are the things that I can't change? If you don't get along with your boss and they're the owner of the company, it's probably not gonna change. They've been working there for a long time or that's not gonna change. Is it a specific task that, maybe you could do it once a month and, have it take half a day instead of every single day? Maybe. But there's space to be investigating some of that. Um, if you're somebody that doesn't have a lot of work experience, the same thing goes for you. So think through, you've had coursework, maybe you've worked in a group setting. That's very, very common in college these days to be doing that. Maybe you've done extracurriculars, you've played on a team, you've been part of a club or an organization. Hey, you were part of a small group. Like, what role did you play in those things? Um, those are ways to really give you some insight into who you are and what you like. And so, if there was a particular time, maybe one small group that you're a part of was really impactful and meaningful to you, and you always look back on that and say, this was a really happy time in my life. And then you were in a different small group, like, what changed? What did you like? What was working? What wasn't working? And, your job may not look just like a small group, but it will give you some insight into yourself. Maybe it was a great fit for you because you had people that were checking in on you, or setting clear expectations or things like that. There was accountability and everybody was on the same reading plan and everybody had a clear thing that they had to do to be able
mhm,
to, not to be able to come to small group, but so that you could all participate. So be looking at some of those things to sort that out. Every class that you take in college is different, and there are different ones that will stand out to you. I took Bio 100 my senior year of college, and it's surprising how often I talk about this class. I'm never going to be a scientist. Like, it's not my jam, but it was one of my first classes that had like lab experience, and just that hands-on learning was very
mm,
eye-opening to me. Um, I went to school for business, so like this we just don't have that. We had like group projects, but like the hands-on learning was just a very eye-opening experience for me to realize like, oh, I do learn well by doing and not just by like researching. Because the
Mm,
College of Business does research-based projects versus like physically doing projects.
yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting that you're, well, there's sort of for each of those scenarios, the person that maybe doesn't have a lot of experience in the particular field versus somebody who doesn't have a lot of work experience at all. It's funny as you were talking about the first group of people, of like maybe you're just new on the scene of this type of work. It almost sounded like skills are very similar to assessing whether or not like a church would be a good
Mhm.
fit.
Yeah.
some of those some of those things of like, okay, is this just like an every now and then thing that I don't kind of like, or is it somebody high up in leadership that's going to be around for a long time that
Yep.
gives me some problems? Is it the environment? What is it? Big deal, small deal? Like, that it feels like, oh, there's some transferable skills here of assessing fit at work and assessing fit
Yep.
at a church,
Mhm.
actually. And then the other group of people that just don't have a lot of work experience, that's interesting. Saying like, okay, well, where are other places that you have been put to work or you have had to put your skill sets into practice, and did you feel like you were leaning into your strengths, or did it feel like, this is something that's just kind of a grind, I can do it for now but this is not a long term thing? And learning from those experiences, which you can also flip around and say that's going to be super helpful for you as far as like applying to other
Right.
jobs and discerning what kind of skill sets you have, of like, okay, well, what kind of work have I done in the past and how are those skills generalizable to other places? So even as you're sort of discerning, is this place a good fit? You're starting to almost build the Rolodex of what are the things that I can draw from as I'm filling in a resume or as I'm sitting down in an interview with somebody and being able to share these kinds of skills that I have and experiences that I
Yeah,
have.
absolutely. Every job you will learn something. And even if the, the only takeaway that you have is what you don't want in a manager or what you don't want in a job, like that is a very valuable thing to know. Um, Even if you haven't been able to pinpoint exactly what you want, that's important. The other thing I'll
Mm,
say is, interviews are just as much, if you're pursuing a job, interviews are just as much for you to get to know the company. Literally today, I told you I'm in HR. Literally today, I had an interview scheduled with somebody. We had a phone conversation, and they reached out to me today and said, you know what, after talking about it more, this isn't a good fit for me. So I'm going to like withdraw from this position. And I just
mm,
said, "Great, like, I'm glad that you decided that's not a good fit for you." Um, I was still interested in having a second conversation, but I was like, "If you're gonna take yourself out now, like, from this position, like, I'm glad for you to do that now, when you already have hesitations on it, so
mm.
that you can find something that's a good fit for you." If you're working full time, like, that's far too long of a day to not like the people around you, and to not like
Mhm.
the majority of the work that you do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And to be reminded that you have a lot of agency in this decision, like you are an active participant in this process and work. Okay, I say that knowing that there are some people that are like, literally, I have no other job
Mhm.
option than the one that I have right now. And so that may be a place that you're like, I just have to gut it out. But all through that process, that you can be thinking, like, okay, is there something I can do to help change my experience, whether it's the way that I'm thinking or I'm interacting? Or are there things that I can do to try to maybe nudge my environment in ways that are helpful? And then if those aren't the case, then I can also be an active participant in looking for other places of employment. And that you don't just have to let a bad work situation happen to
Mhm.
you. That you are a part of that environment and trying to help change things. And at the same time, I say that not being the new sheriff in town that's coming to just like clean up the
Yeah.
joint or whatever, like also like, okay, I'm going to submit myself to the environment and try to learn how things work here, but you're also actively engaging with the world around you and saying like, okay, this is what it looks like to participate and really do the work of figuring out, is this a good fit or not? And if it's not, then I am going to actively pursue next steps
Yep.
from here.
Yeah, if you're new to a job, take time to just learn how things are at that position before you try changing things.
Yeah.
There's certainly going to be things that are this is just the way that it's always been done. But there's also probably a reason of why things are happening the way that they are, and recognize that you're the new person, so you don't know everything about the position yet, and that will come with time. That's not a bad thing. That will come with time. And if you've been there for a long time and you're trying to decide, like, hey, should this change? Uh, the amount of things that can change is very, very high. It's more about people's willingness to change things. And there are so many times we have a small staff, but like our staff will come and say, like, "Hey, I'm wondering about doing this," and I'm like, "Sure, I don't care. Like, go for it." And they've kind of worked it up to be this big deal in their brain. And we don't have a lot of people that do the exact same role. So there's a certain amount of like, I have no idea if you're spending an hour on this or 10 hours on this. And so I'm glad that you said, this is a terrible waste of my time. Can we do something different? Because I hate this process. Great. Like, let's change
Yeah.
that and make this a better fit for you. I'm happy to do
Mm,
that. If it's that big of a deal, or if it's that time consuming or whatever. So there are quite a few things that can be changed. Um, and it doesn't always happen overnight. So if you're
mm,
in the phase of, oh man, should I quit my job? I really don't like this thing. Change does happen, but it's not always this overnight success story of, hey, I asked for this and I got it right away.
mm. Yeah, and it feels like a good time, that's a really great opportunity to learn, like, how much part we talked about agency, but also, like, how much partnership do you have with the people around you? Like, how willing to engage with, "Oh, this doesn't seem to be working for you. Okay, maybe, like, bring a list of ideas and let's see if there's something that makes sense in this environment and makes sense for you." And you can start to test the waters to see, like, do I have a partnership with my supervisor, with my manager, with my coworkers that we can sort of work through some of these things? Or is it going to be, I just got to I either have to do it subversively not in a negative way. Don't, that's not what I mean, but just like, I'm going to quietly do this a better way that does not throw people off. Anyways, that's an
Mhm.
opportunity to check and see, like, are we partners in
Right.
this process, or am I kind of going at it
Yeah,
alone
and the
here?
more the
And
more corporate your job is, the more if there's 20 people all doing the same job, uh the how you're doing things and the system and the routine and the structure, like, that is going to be harder to switch. Um
mm,
unless it's going to change the bottom line for the company, in which case, like, hey, you just
yeah,
got their go ahead, because now it's 15 or 20 people, whatever I said, that are now having this impact. If you're in a smaller company, people are willing to work with you because they know you personally. It's not to say that corporate America doesn't know anybody, but uh, it has the ripple effect through multiple people. So whatever they commit to for you, they usually have to commit to for a whole group of people, and that's usually a harder
yeah,
yes, for that.
yeah. Yeah, you mentioned something earlier, and that was that, no matter where you work, no matter what job experience you have, you're always going to learn something, even if it is, I don't like this type of work, or I know that I don't work well with this kind of manager. Are there other, like, broader marketable skills, or even just maybe soft skills, or kind of like, oh, I can file this away for my own, just kind of like quiet ninja skill set in the
Mhm.
background kind of thing? Like, are there more of these that we can glean from work experience, even if it's not necessarily our favorite work?
Yeah, I mean, any job that you do, gives you insight into an industry that you wouldn't otherwise have. Um,
Mm,
there are certainly positions where people specialize. Um, once you're in nursing, you're probably not in something outside of medicine necessarily. But not all roles are like that. And so having that insight into a different industry is really helpful. But again, it's what you're sharing with your next employer. Hey, we did this when I worked at this place, and this is why we did it. You might not choose the same thing, but because of the why, you might have something to contribute to that conversation. I think
Mm,
you learn what it's like to be the new person, which is super helpful to be part of a team and to take the initiative to get to know other people. It also makes you realize like how unclear we are about directions because you're asking
yeah.
a lot of things, or there's a lot of assumptions that everybody knows this acronym or this lingo and they don't because they've been here 2 days, like they don't know that stuff yet. And so being willing to slow down and share some of that. But just in general, like every role, you've learned something. Even if it was
Mm,
the part-time summer job, even if it was overhearing a conversation from someone else. I recently heard a story about a kid's summer job where like they had to check in on their phone and he forgot his phone at home. And so like even that, not this massive life skill, but like, hey, you learned that you need to come prepared to be able to even check in at work. Okay, great.
mm,
Like, do I have everything that I need to come to work? I used to be a waitress, same thing. If I didn't have my apron, like that was a really long shift of carrying things instead of putting it in my apron. Um, so every role has something that you will learn. Um, and and it's important to be documenting some of those things. I think getting it out of your brain makes it a little more tangible. Um, reception roles, you're learning about communicating with others, how to be friendly to a complete stranger, and how to share communication, or how to communicate information clearly and quickly.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, this is I've mentioned my recognition of this a few times here, but over the course of so much of this season in particular, like all through 2025 up to this point, there's been so many applications for the necessity to sit down and to keep track of things. Like typically, it's in a very like spiritual sort of sense of like having a daily examine and going back and reflecting. Like, okay, where did I encounter God? Where did I think that I missed him? And is God directing me in some particular way because of the things that I'm starting to sense from going back and reflecting so consistently? And it feels like this is a very hands-on practical application of that same skill of like what does it look like to keep a running list and reflecting consistently on, are there new skills that I engaged with
Mhm.
today that I could write down and that I could, just I'm going to throw it on a piece of paper, or I'm going to have an ongoing living resume document that I can just start throwing things into, not because I intend to leave, or I have this sort of, safety ejector seat
Yeah.
sort of thing that any moment, if I need to go, I can cut and run here. But just to say, this is really important for me to use this, and to be able to, because maybe you'll be invited to be on a board somewhere or whatever. Who knows
Mhm.
what the invitation could be or the opportunity could be? But then you have a running list of like, wow, here are the projects that I worked on and the skills that came into play, and here's how I've been developing. Here are ways that I failed. Like this is something that went totally wrong, and here's how I
You will have
responded.
those too, those
And
failures. It will happen.
Y yes. Yeah, and people will ask you about them, like, and it's really good to be able to have those down and to have a thoughtful spin on what you learned and what you did, how you responded in when things went completely sideways for you. And so, once again, it feels like you may not be able to give us a very explicit list of, "Yes, here's every marketable skill that you'll get," but the thing that you have done is encourage us sit down and start developing a bank of experiences and skills that you're developing, so that you are prepared if you need to talk about those in the future.
Yeah, and most people, again, don't have reality in front of them because they're just so used to what they've been doing. So even if
Mm,
you've only been in a job for a few months, uh, you may forget some of the skills that you have. You may take for granted that you know how to use a computer and that you have used Microsoft Excel since you were in eighth grade. Like that's not everybody's reality, and so part of doing that inventory is figuring out what have you done? What do you do on a regular basis? And then the other thing, like, you were saying, John, not to make it a like, hey, I'm just prepping my resume to get me out of here, but as a way to take pride in what you do and what you've accomplished. I have a
mhm,
reminder once a month, and it literally just says like, write down your accomplishments. I have a kudos like folder in my email. If somebody says something or like there's something I'm particularly proud of, I file it there because it's a lot harder
mhm.
to find those things, when you need them, if you haven't done that. Usually your mind goes
Yeah.
blank when you get asked a question like that. And you're like, I don't know. But when you can look back and go, oh, yeah, I forgot about that project, or wow, when I go back and count, I did 25 of these this last year and I would have only been able to come up with 12. Okay, like you just negated half of your work. So,
Right.
when you can have those accomplishments written down, that's helpful. And the more often that you do it, the more you're thinking about it, the more you're also showing gratitude to other people because you're recognizing what they're doing, which makes you a better part of the team. And it's just easier when you like flex that muscle of doing it on a regular basis, to appreciate yourself, appreciate the skills that you have, and see the progress that's being made as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's feels like a really great practice to keep those. If nothing else, than to be able to review and to find encouragement, because oftentimes oftentimes our work is sort of a no news is good
Right.
news situation. As long as you're not getting chewed out by your boss, a lot of the time it means you're doing a good
Yep.
job, or at least you're not doing a terrible job, and sometimes that's good
Hmm.
enough. and and so we can sometimes be hurting for, or like waiting for, sort of a pat on the back, and it's not, it just usually doesn't, they don't come all that often. So the times that they do, like, it's really great to file them away in a kudos folder, like you
Yep.
said. I have a keepers folder in my email, that is, anytime somebody gives me a high five for something, I'm like, I'm just gonna file that away for later, because sometimes I feel really bummed out, and I just need to remember that I've done a good job here, here, and here recently. Okay, that's good. I mean, keep going. And yeah, I think that even that is just really helpful, whether or not it's for prepping a resume, or if it's just for like, this is just for me so I can stay encouraged. Then that's really helpful. Um, Caitlin, just to kind of open things up very broadly, one last time, we started broad, we narrowed, we'll broad again one more time, broaden one more time here, and that's, um, is there either something that you haven't gotten to share at this point, or just a final word of encouragement that you would give? Again, you're sitting across the table from that alum in their first year of life after graduation, and they're asking big questions about assessing fit and should I quit my job? Do you have a final word of encouragement that you would give to
Yeah,
them?
absolutely. The practical side of me is always thinking, has something changed? Is this a temporary change and we're just getting through this? It's a season that's really hard.
Mm,
And giving encouragement into that this won't last forever. Is this different than what you signed up for? Those are all good things to be considering. Um, and then, just on the less practical side, you're not alone in this. Most people that are looking for jobs are not advertising it, because turns out we like to pay our bills while while looking for a job for the most part. It certainly makes things less stressful when you don't have that deadline. So you
mm,
are not alone. I would recommend reaching out if you know somebody in HR, probably not someone who works with you in HR, but if you know somebody in HR or you know somebody who's in charge of hiring, ask them to take a look at your resume. If you are looking for that new opportunity, or be able to talk through that with them, um, talk to the people that you trust. They often can see things that you don't see, or you don't notice about yourself,
Mm,
and can just speak into some of those things. They know you well, and then the professional side of, somebody who does this all the time can also sort out, like, yep, that's what happens at companies. And you might just want to wait it out and see what happens. You might want to give it 6 months and see where you end up. But you're not alone in this. Any time that you think you are alone in something, you're not. Somebody might not have the exact same experience as you, but they've got something pretty darn close. And so there is no alone when going through these thoughts of, holy crap, like, should I be quitting? I don't know what I should do about this. It's totally okay to have those questions, and just try to sort that out. Bring your people into that conversation. They're there for you.
all right, alumni, should you quit your job? What do you think? It sounds like there are some really obvious times to say yes to that question. If you're being put in danger and you're not a Hollywood stunt person or lion tamer for the circus, then yeah, you should quit your job. If you're in a straight up toxic or unethical or illegal work situation, then yes, you should quit your job. But if it isn't that cut and dry, there are a few things that you can do. Make a list of what's causing you to question the position. Are those constant problems, or is this just a challenging season? Are there major problems or just minor annoyances? What's the ratio of using strengths versus grinding through weaknesses? Is there a trusted confidant who can talk to you about this? Is there something you can do to change the situation or the environment? Seeking thoughtful answers to many of those questions will help you discern fit and next steps. And if it's time to go, don't beat yourself up about it. Nothing is wasted. You've learned important things at this job. Keep track of those things, take them with you, and use them to continue developing personally and professionally. Kaitlynn, thank you so much for coming back to hang out with us. I'm always grateful for your wisdom on these topics, and I also love you. Alumni, be sure to come back next week as we wrestle with the question, is church worth waking up for? Until then, consider sharing this episode with someone who needs to hear it, and I will see you in the after, alumni. Thanks for listening to After 4. This podcast is brought to you by the InterVarsity Alumni Relations Team, hosted and produced by John Steele, production assistance by Mike Zentera, edited by Caleb Leppert, and our After 4 theme music was written and performed by John Steele. I want to look up the actual term that we were trying to figure out the other day. At the beginning.
The great, not recession, the great
Yeah.
resignation.
What was it called? The Great Resignation.
That's
There
what it
is.
is.
Okay.